1045 The Team and 1045theteam.com. It is Levack Goz here with you. And joining us now, this is pretty cool. He's a local guy. He's a contributor to RotoWire and Lineup Lab. Mike Barner joins us on the phone lines. And Mike, let's get after it. Tonight's the Fantasy Football Forum. You're on the clock. Mike Barner's picking a team. Who are you taking with the number one overall pick?
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I am taking David Johnson with the first overall pick. I know it's pretty close between Le'Veon Bell, but David Johnson had over 1,200 rushing yards last year. He was just under 900 receiving yards. He had 20 total touchdowns. The big thing about him is he had 80 catches and 120 targets last year. That's most in both categories of any running back. He actually had more receptions than wide receivers DeAndre Hopkins and Allen Robinson last year.
Wow.
So that gives him a lot of value in PPR format. He's going to have a huge workload. He's the number one overall pick.
David Johnson there with the number one overall pick. I know some had maybe talked about Le'Veon Bell as well being in that mix. Let's stick with the running back position, and I know things can change over the next few hours here, maybe next few days. Ezekiel Elliott, depending on your league, where could you see Zeke going in most drafts?
Well, even though he's got the suspension, he's appealing the suspension. There's a possibility it's going to get reduced. Even if he misses the full 6 games, I still think he could go somewhere between the second and fourth rounds of your draft. He's going to have tremendous value, even if he misses the full 6 games. If you think you're going to get him in the middle of the later rounds of your draft, you're mistaken. He'll be long gone by then.
There it is, Ezekiel Elliott. Now let's talk about the quarterback position. We're looking at some of the guys who could be the maybe second round, third round top quarterbacks in your mind to make sure you get after. And who's the number one quarterback in fantasy this season?
I think Aaron Rodgers is the number one quarterback. He's got a lot of weapons. He's Martellus Bennett edition is going to be a big one for him. He's probably the best tight end that he's ever had during his tenure in Green Bay. I am not one of those guys that's going to draft one of the top quarterbacks. I prefer to wait, take someone like Marcus Mariota or Jameson Winston. But if you want to go big early, go with Aaron Rodgers.
He's a contributor to RotoWire and Lineups Lab, a local guy. Mike Barner joining us here on the phone lines on 1045 The Team, and just hours away from the Fantasy Football Forum. Make sure you check it out at the Albany Capital City Center. Head out there, get all the fantasy football advice that you could ever want and ever could imagine. Head out there, but right now we're talking to Mike about some advice here. Let's get some sleepers and some busts from a guy who does this for a living for fantasy football sites. First, let's start with the sleepers. Some guys at those skill positions that you think can have a really good season, but right now are undervalued.
So one of the big guys I like at the receiver position is Willie Snead. With Brandon Cooks moving on to the Patriots, Michael Thomas is the one that's getting a lot of publicity for having a breakout season. He already got a ton of targets and yardage last season. I think Willie Snead is going to have a big increase in his role. Last season, he had 72 receptions, and he just missed 900 yards. I think he can definitely hit 1,000 receiving yards for the first time in his career. He may not get you a ton of touchdowns. He still has a lot of upside, especially in PPR format.
Anybody at the running back or quarterback position? I know you touched on Mariota and guys there, but how about a running back that really is flying under the radar that you really like?
I'm going to go really deep. Samaje Perine, the rookie running back for the Washington Redskins. Jay Gruden did say the other day that Rob Kelly is still expected to be a starter. I don't like Rob Kelly. He showed some flashes last season, but he rushed 37 yards or less in 3 of his last 6 games. I think Perine could eventually take over the starting job, and he's someone that you can get late in your draft.
All right, those are the positives there. And again, Mike Barner from RotoWire. Mike Barner joining us here on the phone lines. Those are his picks as sleepers. Remember, he's a contributor for RotoWire and Lineup Lab. Let's go to the other side of it there. Some guys that you would stay away from when it comes to draft day.
One guy that I do not like is Ben Roethlisberger. The guy has missed 6 games over the last 2 seasons. Even when he does take the field, he always seems to have some sort of nagging injury. One of the really crazy things about his numbers is he has extreme home and road splits. Last season at home, he averaged 319 passing yards a game. He had 20 total touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. Now, on the road, he only averaged 238 passing yards a game. He only had 9 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Just to pile on a little bit more there, he actually played 2 more games on the road than at home.
Wow.
So he had half the touchdowns in 2 more games. I'm staying away from a quarterback that you can only play in half the season.
All right, so a lot of people wonder about this question. We get the question all the time. I've had people email me before. You get to do this for a living. You get to write for RotoWire. You get to write for Lineup Lab. How do you become a fantasy football writer and actually make money off of this?
Well, it takes a long time. I've been doing this for 10 years. You got to do a lot of research, look at a lot of box scores. A lot of people think if you just watch the game, you can get a lot of great info there. Most of the information that I like to gather is after the game, looking at box scores. You can always go back and review some tape, but it takes a lot of dedication. You got to work a lot of nights, a lot of weird hours, but it's great. I've loved it, and I really like contributing to both RotoWire and Lineup Lab. It's
really cool that a guy from Guilderland's doing this for a living. It is Mike Barner joining us here on the phone line. So give us the best advice. If someone's either at a live draft, you got the big board set up, you got maybe a few cold ones out there, the best advice you can give a fantasy football player, whether they've been playing it for 10 to 15 years or it's their first season, what would you tell them?
Be prepared. Write down guys on a sheet or in some sort of Excel format, guys that you want to target during the draft. Don't write down guys like Antonio Brown and David Johnson. We all want those guys. You're not going to forget about them when the draft gets heated up and you're trying to keep track of who's got what and what positions you need on your team. You're going to want to keep track of guys that you want to target in the mid to late rounds. That way, as you get deep into the draft, you're trying to keep track of both your roster and your opponent's rosters. There's those key guys that you won't miss when you were doing all your research before it started.
Make sure to give him a follow throughout the football season if you're looking for some fantasy football advice, and make sure to check out the Fantasy Forum tonight at the Albany Capital City Center at Roto. Mike Barner, he covers it. He is a contributor to RotoWire, Lineup Lab, Guilderland's Own. Mike, we appreciate the time, man. Best of luck, and I'm sure we'll be talking again later on this football season.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show, and good luck at the forum.
There he goes, Mike Barner right there. Woods, you heard some of his picks there. David Johnson, number 1 overall pick. Samaje Perine is a sleeper. Stay away from Ben Roethlisberger. Willie Snead at the wide receiver position. What do you make of some of those picks from Mike?
I don't know if I'm staying away from Ben Roethlisberger. I don't know if I can do that yet. Given that he's going to possibly get Martavis Bryant back, I just think it's another weapon for him. And then you look at that offensive line is back in shape. And who knows how many seasons Ben has left. So, I mean, if I'm Ben Roethlisberger, I want to go out on top. So I'm going to give this season everything I got. So I might pick Ben Roethlisberger this year.
Ben Roethlisberger is driving me nuts because it feels like that old bet in Vegas where the money's going in one way, and you feel like, okay, they know more than I do. Maybe I should follow Vegas. But then you realize, hang on, there's such good value here. And I know that word drives some sports fans crazy. Closer talks about it when we're picking horses. But I've now started to like Ben Roethlisberger because everybody hates Ben Roethlisberger. Everybody's been told to stay away from him. And I get Mike's point. Mike's stats are right on point. But I know if I get Ben Roethlisberger in a later round because nobody else wants him,
that's exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah, if he's there in a round that I'm comfortable picking him with, I'm gonna grab him.
With Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and the weapons you just touched on there, it's gonna be an interesting pick. Again, 6 o'clock. The doors have already opened. Panel's getting underway at 7:30 tonight at the Albany Capital City Center. Get out there, Fantasy Football Forum. It's your chance to be there. Coming up, we got some headlines, things that have happened today, right here on 104.5 The Team.